So we got to play the HTC Vive. We played it right here. Terence and I, we also got to play the PlayStation VR. And I guess, have we all tried the Oculus or...
Dev Kit 1 for me.
Okay, Dev Kit 1 for me as well, too. And pretty much, the Oculus is just like the HTC Vive, only it doesn't have room scale. So if you,
so it doesn't sound interesting, in other words.
Pretty much. If you limit yourself to the HTC Vive, the sitting experience, that's pretty much what an Oculus Rift is. Obviously, the screen resolution, a little bit of the hardware is different, but essentially it's the same kind of idea. So, all right, guys, we all played all that stuff today. So, Mike, what did you think of your HTC Vive experience?
Your Virgin HTC Vive.
Because this is my first time playing it. I was quite literally blown away, and because it did something that I wanted VR to always be. Now, as I discussed with you guys before, the first time or only time I've actually tried VR was back in the early 90s. They had a mall kiosk set up, and that was back the 80-pound headset.
Was that Virtuality?
Yeah. I played Virtuality back in San Francisco when I was a kid in the 90s. Yeah,
everything was flat-shaded polygons, and that was right when movies like Lawnmower Man and Congo were coming out, where VR was kind of like the buzzword, as what comes around goes around, right? But what I always wanted from that experience was to really get involved and feel like I'm there, and the HTC Vive did that, because when we were playing Budget Cuts, there was a scene where a robot's coming around the corner, and I instinctively put my back to the wall, even though there was no wall there, but my brain was totally fooled, thinking I really am in this real world and peeking around corners. And that's, to me, I've always wanted that. That to me is the experience that I've always dreamed about in the 90s, and I've actually got to now to fully experience it.
Yeah.
It came true. Dreams do come true, and this is actually what's happened now. I was super impressed. Very impressed.
I mean, for me, Budget Cuts is got to be my favorite experience on HTC Vive.
Yep.
I want to say it's my favorite VR experience I've ever had in my entire life. Now, there are a lot of VR games out there I haven't actually played yet. I know a lot of people are telling me to play Hover Junkers, and I haven't played that one. That's like supposed to be a really big one. But this game felt like it does everything correct. I was very critical about first-person shooters on VR, because you can't walk around. Like, that's something you can't do. But this game solved that problem, right? You actually have this little portal technology where you can go around from room to room. You don't have guns, and because you don't have guns, you think, well, I don't have guns, that sucks. But no, you don't have guns because it's way more tactical to throw things, and because of that,
like lining up your shots kind of perfectly.
Exactly, and you've got this way better experience that you simply wouldn't get from just being able to shoot things. Now, we all tried out the NVIDIA Playroom Funhouse, and that had some gun experience in it, so you could actually shoot. And guns do work in VR. Yep. The problem is the ability to move. That's what really pulls it away, right?
I did, on my first HTC Vive room scale experience, I was at the West Edmonton Mall at the Microsoft store, and one of the 3 demos that I did was Space Pirate Trainer. Now, Space Pirate Trainer was basically an arena setup where your dominant hand, you would shoot, and then your not dominant hand, if you kind of raise it over your shoulder like this and pull down, you'd pull down a shield. So it was kind of like more of a traditional first-person shooter, per se, where you're able to walk around and shoot, and I really enjoyed that because I had the ability to duck and to blind block. That was all fine and dandy, and that was probably the demo that I thought of the most coming into today before playing Budget Cuts and the Funhouse. What's the
I think it's just called like Funhouse, whatever. It's the NVIDIA made their own free thing you can download. Right. Anyone can play it. Well worth it too, but it's a lot of physics based.
It's a lot of physics based, but it's somewhat. It felt accurate when I was using the bow and arrow. That felt great. When I was shooting with the revolvers, it felt great as well. So thinking about Space Pirate Trainer and now thinking of Budget Cuts, I prefer Budget Cuts a lot more because even though it felt more limited in space, because with Space Pirate Trainer you actually had kind of like a platform arena, and I felt that within the room scale environment that I was in, I had a lot of opportunity to move around. But I love the kind of the portal technology where the first time I played through it, it was just stumbling, it was crazy. But coming into it and understanding the mechanics, it was fun because it was just like boing doom, boing doom. I just kept on jumping around,
and that was a quick process too. How natural it suddenly felt.
Yeah,
you don't get
kind of
lost
cumbersome
in
at first because you had to squeeze the controller for certain things. But within like literally 2 minutes, suddenly you're just whipping around like crazy, and
it's hilarious because it feels so natural. Like I was telling you guys earlier. When you play if this game was released on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One and PC, and it was just like a basic game without VR headsets, it would just be a game nobody would play. It'd be this indie throwaway title that no one would care about. But as soon as you add the concept of VR, it completely defines that experience. It's unlike anything else I've ever played on VR because it really does pull you into it, and it makes you feel like you're just doing things instinctively that you naturally would do in real life. Like you would hide behind a wall when you were trying to avoid stuff, and they're really good at this. And I know that this game is pretty early days, and it's just a demo, right? Mm-hmm. The final version of the game isn't out yet, but I gotta say, I was impressed. Like, I was so impressed. If this was the only VR game I had ever played, I would have been so sure that VR was just going to be like the most successful thing on the world.
Everything that I've played on HTC Vive thus far has been great.
Yeah.
Whether it's been the painting game, or it's not a game, but the painting application, whether it's been just even the simple setup where you're making balloons and tossing them and shooting them. Or even like in budget cuts when you were taking a knife or any object and throwing it there and catching it again.
I love that.
Like just that cool little concept. Like you can actually do that.
or even the one where you're on the sunken pirate ship. I think it's called like the Blue or something like that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I have a feeling that since I don't really count my time with the dev kit 1 from Oculus Rift because it wasn't a final version, it just kind of gave me an idea of what the technology was going to be, because it's probably been about 2 years or maybe 3 years since I've played it at this point. But with the HTC Vive, it created a problem, and it's a problem we need to discuss. and the problem is how it compares to PlayStation VR. Now, the thing with PSVR, I keep on reading over and over again that people love it, that the subpixels really make up for the lower resolution. It's a greater sense of immersion, a greater sense of depth. When I played the PSVR, I had to ask the attendant no fewer than 2 times, is this the clearest it gets? Now, my personal problem with PSVR is, you know, it felt really good. Okay, I'm gonna say that the headset felt good.
I gotta say, the headset of all the headsets I've used right now, that one I think feels the best on your head because there's lots of dials, lots of options. It feels very comfortable. It doesn't feel weighted down. And I think mostly because HTC Vive, where it's an experience where you're standing up and you're moving around, I think that has a problem where, you know, it's a lot of just movement in a space, so you're constantly aware that there's that line behind your head, you know. And I mean, you
occasionally you could feel around, but one part of your brain takes over and goes, okay, you just instinctively know it's there, and you step over and stuff like that. Yeah.
With PlayStation VR, it doesn't have that, which I think is a very big positive. But that's kind of it's almost a positive sort of negative because you're just not walking around; you're sitting.
Well, that's what I said. Like now, being the one guy who hasn't had a chance to try the Sony VR. Remember, I said to you guys after I tried, especially budget cuts. I said to you, I instantly have a problem with PlayStation VR because now it seems like it's almost obsolete already. Because now that I've played this where I'm full motion, you know, getting up and ducking and physically getting on the ground and crouching and looking over corners and moving, like, you know, even though you had to use the Pearl technology to get around, you still had that space where you could walk around. And like my brain thought there was a desk there, thought this was there. And now I'm thinking like, okay, with PlayStation VR, we're using the controller to do a lot of those motions that I'm doing with my body. I don't know now. Like I wish I really tried to I'm almost spoiled by doing the Vive first.
Well, that's the same thing that happened with me, and maybe you're going to have that experience as well.
I think he is. I tried the PlayStation VR after I tried the Vive, and yeah, it's a completely like. So when I sat down to play the PlayStation VR the very first time, I was playing it in EB Games or GameStop, you know, whatever anybody calls it, and when I was there.
A fucking ripoff?
No, oh, gee. The store that everybody goes to play games or to buy games because it's the only store that does it. But I went there and I tried the heist demo. And as soon as the heist demo started up, the game didn't work because it was too bright in the room, and the PlayStation camera couldn't identify the orbs on the controllers. So that really sucked. And I was like, oh, well, I can't play this game. So then I got to play Valkyrie, which worked because they give you a PlayStation controller, and that doesn't really need to see where your hands are. So I tried PlayStation Valkyrie, and weird thing too, that was the first time I ever identified what sex I was in the game. So when I looked down, my character had breasts, and I was like, so that's the thing. Like, I usually don't see that when I look down. Then I was looking around, but the problem with HTC Vive, all the games don't show your body.
Yeah,
you never think about this.
That's a programming thing.
It's a programming thing, and I guess they could show your body, but I kind of like that more. I like the ability to feel like I'm actually in this game. It doesn't matter if I'm a girl, it doesn't matter if I'm a guy, I'm playing this game. And your sense of where your hands are is really cool because it felt like it was working. And I know the PlayStation VR is going to do the same thing with the controllers, but with the Vive, it was just a different experience. When I played Valkyrie, my hands in game were somewhere where my controlling, my actual hands weren't. So it's like the hands were over here with a joystick and stuff like that, and I'm doing this, and the hands weren't doing what these were doing. So I was like, this is kind of, it's not keeping me in there. And then because I don't have the full room experience where I can walk around, I felt sick. I actually got a little motion sickness. And this is the same motion sickness I felt with the HTC, or sorry, not the HTC Vive, but the Oculus Rift Dev Kit 1. Now, since then, they've apparently made it better, but I don't think it's going to. The HTC Vive, with the ability to go through your entire room, makes you feel one-to-one like you're in that experience. It doesn't feel like a disconnect. And I agree with you guys. I think the HTC Vive is one of the best experiences you can get. I still don't think it's going to win. If only for the fact that it's the price. That price?
Yeah, and also the amount, as we discussed before, the amount of space, because after I tried this, Terence right away, asked me like, okay, so when are you getting yours? And my first statement was, it is expensive, but already was like, I'm thinking of my condo and the space I have. I'm like, I don't know if I really have enough space to really enjoy it the way it's meant to be. That's the problem. So it's the same, anything that tracks your motion has. Like, they just need wide open spaces, whether it be PlayStation Move and Kinect back in the early days. They just needed these wide open areas to really work well, and Vive needs it. And the reality is, not every gamer has, like, the wide space or in spare room. Like, a lot of them, people are confined. So that's where the PlayStation VR has the major advantage, because, A, without the extra expense, you already have a game box that's going to run it, and you can literally just sit in your chair.
Well, there's another advantage that it has, though. The disadvantage, of course, is the tech isn't as good. We all know that, and especially seeing and playing and experiencing HTC Vive room scale first, the PSVR doesn't come close. Yeah. Now, like I said, I've done a lot of reading where people are like, "Oh, I played Drive Club VR, and oh my god, it was so amazing." Like when you were in the car, it actually felt like you were in the car, and that has a lot to do with programming of the software, and that's where the advantage gets. The two big advantages is the cost. You know what? If you have a PS4, and if you're lucky enough and you already have a PlayStation 4 camera and a couple Move controllers, then the purchase of the headset for the PSVR is going to be cheap. But if you have to buy everything, so the headset, you basically get the SKU that has the Move controllers and the camera and a PS4. Now we're starting to get up there in money, and then it's kind of like the gap is a little smaller. But that gap, this is what fits in it. Sony, they're a company that makes games for their system. And I get nervous when they say, 50 gameplay experiences or 50 virtual reality experiences by Christmas. So what that means to me is going to be a lot of glorified demos. But what it has is Sony has a consistent, we'll see in the next couple of weeks, but they have a consistent architecture that they can have developers program for. And it is a system, it is a console, and historically consoles win hand over fist in this. All we need to ever do is look at console exclusives to remember why we have consoles and not just PCs. But in terms of the tech right now, and I don't want to do a judgment on the PSVR until we play it in our own homes or play it in someone's home. But right now, I'm still looking to be impressed by the PSVR because I know there's a huge cost associated with the HTC Vive room scale and a gaming rig to go with it, and then you have to worry about the games that come with it. But I know there's going to be fun games with the PSVR, but I'm also going to be sitting in a chair and I'm not going to be able to move around. And unlike you, I didn't get motion sickness with Valkyrie, but I also wasn't impressed by Valkyrie. It was like, oh, cool, but it was like, it was disorienting. It wasn't even, like, for me, it was just the disorientation where it's like, yeah, this feels exactly the same as if I was watching on the screen. It's like, where am I? See, the problem with the Valkyrie, I find, isn't so much the game. The gameplay was a little bit soft, I found. Like, I mean, come on, I used to play Wing Commander and X-Wing, and I used to play a lot of spacefaring combat games. This one didn't seem too bad, but it didn't seem
seem like it had any real good sense of direction, and it just seemed to have a lot of stuff happening by themselves. And once again, it's a demo.
Yeah.
They had to get through a lot of stuff there, and I didn't really spend a lot of time playing the game. So I don't know, maybe after 15 minutes I wouldn't feel so sick, or maybe after 15 minutes I'd be in the back of the EB Games throwing up into the garbage bin where they throw out all the brand new games that they don't want to sell. I mean, it's like, it was insane when I'm there. My biggest problem is I like to remove myself from the equation. Yeah, of course I'll go out and buy HTC Vive. Of course I'll buy every VR headset. I'm a gamer. Like, I'm a hardcore gamer. That's what we do. We buy a lot of stuff. You have a massive video game collection. You have an untold video game collection yourself, where you just buy a bunch of stuff that you just really like. Not everybody's like us, you know? The people that are listening and watching the show, you guys are hardcore gamers. If you're watching the show, congratulations. You're one of us. But seriously?
Or our condolences.
You're one of us. Yeah, I mean, geez. You know, there's a group of us will have spent pulled an all-nighter playing a game that we rented or we had to return to a friend because we simply had to play that game.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's the kind of experience we have. When I try to remove myself from that, I'm trying to think of everybody out there that's thinking, wow, I'd like to get VR. Where are they going to get VR? Are they going to get it from the Samsung VR? Are they going to get it from the Android, from Google's new VR offerings, which really seem to be more visual experiences and not gaming experiences? You know, a lot of people like to say, oh, Samsung VR is going to win. Oh, Google VR is going to win. Yeah, but they're not. There's no controller bundled with that.
Yeah.
And you can't just be sitting there like with a ViewMaster on your face. There has to be some kind of tactical input that gets put in front of yourself. Like this, we've got... The Vive's got these two controllers, right? And these controllers are essentially your interaction to that world. Oculus Rift has the Xbox One controller, which everyone's very familiar with.
Yep.
And PlayStation is going to have their set of controllers.
4,
The DualShock 4
or
and
the
Move
controllers, yeah. So things people have used already, yeah.
Right? That's what
who's used a Move controller?
Yeah, it's a Move controller, yeah.
I have one, but this is the thing, okay? This is the thing. They're offering a cheaper solution to what the HTC Vive is, okay? Even if it's still like at its most expensive, it's still probably going to be about $1,000 less than the PC competition.
Mm-hmm.
A consumer isn't going to be able to go out there and just go, oh, I want this computer and then I want this platform. They don't have a one-stop shop. Somebody's going to be able to go into a Best Buy and they're going to go, I want PlayStation VR, and they're going to go, here's your kit, and walk out the store.
Yeah.
That's what's going to completely define this. Because this is Apple logic right here, you know? Oh, yeah, a whole bunch of other people were making MP3 players before the iPod came around, but somebody did a one-stop shop. Get your music from iTunes, get your iPod, and go, and that's it. And as much as I hate that as a tech head who would love to just get a million different pieces and put it together and do it myself, those companies have that easier access thing, and that's what the consumers want, not us.
And like we've discussed many times before, when it comes down to, you know, obviously the hardware differences we discussed, obviously the VR, as we all know, is no sugarcoating, is not nearly as powerful as the other systems, but it always comes down to software. When it comes down, you know, it doesn't matter, like, that's the reason why we can still play Super Nintendo. Obviously, it's archaic in terms of technology, but the games are still fun to play. So, if Sony has fun games for the VR, maybe the technology won't matter so much as well.
My question right now for you guys and for you, the viewer, is at this point, where is your money going to go? Are you even interested in getting VR? And if so, what? Because here's the problem that we're in. We have PSVR, which is the easy, because it's what it is. It's still console. It's a console-based idea. There you go. Plug and play, away you go, right? Now, we've been talking a little bit about the Oculus Rift, because who really cares about it at this point? Let's see those touch controllers. We've talked a lot about HTC Vive room scale, but we haven't talked about the other headsets because everybody wants to make a headset. There's one that has a greater peripheral view, which
I forget what company's doing it. The zombie guys.
There's another one, or maybe the same one. There's also a technology that kind of focuses on your eyes. So if you're looking at something close, something that's further away will be out of focus, and vice versa. So it kind of tracks your eyes to approximate that. And even though it isn't one-to-one, yet the concept of that technology is fantastic.
Yeah, have better depth perception as well, yeah.
But herein lies the issue. If you don't have a PC that can run this software to the spec that you need for these headsets, then you have to either upgrade or replace your PC. Then you have to choose which headset are you going to get. And I kind of wish that, like, I'm not convinced at this point that The software is universal to the headset, and therein lies another problem. We're just back to, everybody talks about the PC master race, but it's like the PC master race, they are the master race because they need to circumvent all these different avenues to find the one perfect solution that gets them the gaming experience that they want. Whereas someone that would want to get a console, it's like, okay, I got a PlayStation 4, okay, I got a box that has a PSVR, a camera, and Move controllers. I'm ready to, and the breakout box, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, no, it's true. Honestly, all of us own different computers. All of us have different processors, different graphics cards, probably different operating systems, and that does affect the end result. And honestly, it really does matter when it comes to frames per second. I know, like, oh, you want the highest frames per second just because you do, but yeah, you do, especially in this kind of context, because when you're playing on a headset that you're looking around and stuff, and suddenly the frames become jittery, then you start to throw up because it even like you can, like, let's just say you're really good at not getting sick like ever from anything you visually see. If you have a frame rate disruption while you're playing a game, you're gonna get sick. Remember, anytime you're playing the HTC Vive and it's not perfect, right? There are still little glitches here and there. There's these two little boxes called the lighthouse that kind of triangulate your distance and all that fun stuff. When you guys are playing and the lighthouse is disconnected for a fraction and it moved forward, did you feel like a little?
Yeah, the one moment actually where you guys were showing someone who cut off the connection, like, and I was peeking around a corner and then the screen messed up. I was like, I kind of physically did this. You're right, because for a minute your brain is like trying to basically recalibrate.
Yeah.
And your equilibrium is completely off for a split second.
Right. Same with you.
I found there was one point where I felt my virtual persona moving without me moving, and it was quite unsettling. But again, it wasn't something that was nauseating. But again, it's something. It's a bit more of like
a shock than
it was a shock. But I almost feel that was through human error, because we were sitting somewhere. I was sitting somewhere where I really shouldn't. And you were feeling it. That's why I had to move, because it's like, sorry, I didn't think that being underneath the light. But that lighthouse right over there would cause such an issue.
That's still bullshit. Well, because you've got friends that are coming over and they can't be in the room with you while you play VR. What is this? You're masturbating?
No. You just put them exactly like masturbating. You put them in the corner so they can watch you.
It's such an exclusive. It's such an exclusive experience that you can't invite friends over. I mean, and they can't really be that much in the room with you. It's almost like if I invite friends, like when you guys came over and we were all playing Street Fighter together. We're playing Street Fighter together on the TV, watching it. And when you're playing this, it's wait your turn until you get to play. I kind of don't like that. And if you want multiplayer experiences, well, buddy, you better be sitting on a chair, or you better have another empty room in your house that you can play it. A little bit of that I don't like, but there's nothing you can do. This is essentially the future of this thing. Mm-hmm. The way I'm seeing it in terms of futuristic, what the future is for VR, is that you're going to have video games that are not like the games you have now. If VR becomes important, Call of Duty goes away. There is no way you get that same Call of Duty experience in VR.
Call of Duty's already going away.
Pretty much. You're looking at, when you're thinking of soccer, like, well, you're not going to play soccer in a VR setting. Yeah. You know what you'd be playing? You'd be playing like a VR...
almost like a Kinect Sports kind of thing, where they had this simulation where you kick the ball around a couple of different people. And
actually, Sony's got one where you're actually bumping up a ball with your head into the net.
But here's the thing. That's all cool, because you don't want to have a VR headset on your skull at all times. So, you play a VR game for a VR experience, but there's going to be certain games that will never be a VR experience, nor should they be. Like a 2D Street Fighter game has no business being in the realm of virtual reality, and that's not a knock to it. It is the nature of its design, and we appreciate that. What you said about budget cuts, absolutely true. A whatever experience on a TV, but a completely engrossing experience. I was down on my hands and knees, physically looking down at the ground with probably my head.
He was this close to the ground, like you could literally see him, and he was almost about to bash the ground. But you were in there, you were looking through that ceiling to see if you could find those robots.
But that was the best part, because with walls around you, you have the chaperone system to let you know when you're getting close to the ends of your playing field. But the fun part about the ground is the ground was a chaperone system, so I was able to get down there and kind of like peek through. I was in like an attic or like a ventilation shaft or something, and I had the ability to kind of like get down, and I'm looking through a hole because I'm scoping out these two robots that I want to kill, or want to I want to render. I can't even think of the word right now. I want to disable. So I'm kind of looking as the best way, and it felt so freeing, the fact that I just put a controller down because I wanted to kind of get a better. I wanted to get better
tactile feedback.
That tactile
getting
feeling.
Tactile feedback from your actual environment. Like how crazy that is.
And you know what? And when I wanted to pick it up, there it was. So
Yeah.
I picked up the other Vive controller and got my knife and then started doing like trick angle shots, trying to get like this really weird angle to get through and kill. I loved it. But you know what though? I also like sitting down in front of a TV and playing a game with a controller in my hand.
Yeah,
as well.
this concept that VR will completely overtake everything is nonsense, because it won't. Will it live side by side? I really hope so.
Mm-hmm.
Like I really hope. I've had so much fun with the Vive. I hope VR doesn't become a fad and just disappear like it did in the early '90s. Now the technology is here. But I hope it lives side by side, because you're right. To me, still nothing beats like the home theater experience. You sit down on your couch, giant TV, playing Street Fighter or something like that. But also playing something like Budget Cuts, which you can't do like that. If they can live side by side, man, what a fantastic future we've really got.
Honestly, I think that's going to be the way it plays out, because what it's thinking this way. I think a lot of people are expecting VR to be the next color. You know what I mean? Like the next color of movies, or the next sound of movies. But that's not what this is. This is not the next step that surpasses this step. This is just a secondary course to have a different kind of... it's like, okay, you like having a hamburger? Here is a salad. Here's a hamburger salad. It's still technically the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's still a meal you're eating. This isn't like a brand new paste that you eat a pill and it just satisfies all your hungers. That's not what this is. This is a simple evolution of a new kind of gameplay. I can't imagine this is ever going to replace televisions. I just don't see it happening.
No, this isn't the tech that will replace televisions. No, there will be tech that will eventually replace it, whether it's AR, whether it's holograms, any of that. But VR has a very specific place. VR is poised. I'm not sure if it's going to get mainstream adoption. I don't think so in the first generation of it.
Not with these prices.
Not with the and that was the question for you, faithful viewer. What are you doing? Are you holding out for newer iterations? Are you going to be there to get PSVR? Or do you have a PC that can run that software? And are you going to get an Oculus, or are you going to get an HTC Vive? Do you have the room for room scale? There's so many things. And when we were talking earlier about we don't care, we want something, we deem it worthwhile and we make the investment to get it, right? The problem is it's a little harder to do with headsets, because that box over there that houses the HTC Vive is like $1,200. The Oculus Rift, is much simpler, but it's still very expensive. It's almost like the price puts us in a position where at best we can get one, and if we're really lucky we can get two. But that's a lot of money to throw around at this time. It's too early. So I'm afraid of that, and I'm afraid because for Sony it's a peripheral.
I think that's true. I think everyone was looking at this like it was going to be the next Kinect, like it's going to be the next big thing. And I think the big thing, like the Kinect, was big.
That's the way they wanted. That's what they wanted us to believe.
Yeah.
And it had that's why I worry about VR, because the Kinect did have that initial. It sold 10 million units in this first little while. Like it had a very short term success, and then kind of fell face of the earth with enough Zumba games to kill a man. But
I think VR is going to be successful, but if it's going to be successful, it's going to be for the people that release it at a decent price. And I honestly, no matter how many times I cut it, no matter how many times I analyze it, I think Sony has this locked up. Even if Sony doesn't have the best VR experience, even if Sony doesn't have the best hardware, they understand the price. Because you got to look at it this way. They're doing what Nintendo did with the Wii. They're coming in with the cheapest, absolute bottom barrel cheapest price anyone's coming to releasing these VR headsets. And that's all they got to do. If I can go to the store and I can buy a VR headset, they win. But you know what? I think they're believing that this is going to be the future of all their peripherals, and it's going to force everyone to make VR games. But I don't think that's the truth at all. I think this is seriously... It's going to be a nice little thing that we experience. It's going to be something that I hope stays around for a while. Yeah. I hope it becomes a part of like the gaming zeitgeist. I hope it becomes just like portable gaming, just like console gaming.
It can live side by side. And like we said, if some games will be VR only, Then we'll have our non-VR only games, and we'll have some games with maybe some VR options like Resident Evil 7 or Final Fantasy 15. Will have their little bits where you could play either way. You could play either way, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the way it's going to go.
So Sony is poised to do something very unique for the video game community. They're the ones that are going to get VR headsets into the most hands. Whether they sell 100,000 or 17 million, they're going to, on price and penetration of the PS4 alone, they're going to have the most successful VR headset of the first generation. We all know that that the premier experiences most likely will happen on the PC, which is something we've grown very used to. But programming makes a huge difference. Sony knows a thing or two about software, and I have a feeling that the PSVR is going to lead people into getting successive generational VR headsets, and potentially for the computer as well. I think that Sony is going to be expanding a lot of gamers into the PC realm of gaming.
You know what? Honestly, how I feel about this right now? I feel like Sony isn't going to be the Magnavox Odyssey. Sony isn't going to be the first. Aren't the first people out on VR, but they're definitely going to be the Atari 2600 when it comes to VR headsets. They're going to be the thing that everybody wants to own because it's the easiest to get.
Yeah. The most people own it, and like I discussed before, you arguably will get the better experience if you own a Vive or whatever. But
games.
Exactly, games.
We know Sony will bring the games.
Yeah.
So time will tell. I guess, this is a very tumultuous time for us right now. Very
exciting, actually. Now that I've played the Vive, I'm more excited than I was. If you were to ask me this similar question like a month ago, I would have been a bit more monotone and hum-ha, but like, I'll do that. We'll see. Now that I've played it, experienced it now, I'm like, I'm super excited to see what the future brings now. This is what I've been hoping for like literally the past 20 plus years now, and now it's finally coming true. So
I just hope people pick something.
Yeah.
Because I think it would be a shame if everybody kind of holds back and waits for successive generational upgrades. We need to take the plunge at some point, and as long as this generation of VR goes well, we can expect a 4K headset, like better frame rate, better software in the future. But it's a good starting point. It's a hell of a lot better than it was in the 90s with virtuality when it's like, watching Lawnmower Man and then playing Virtuality was a huge letdown.
Yeah.
An absolute huge letdown.
And as far as it takes for new hardware that's going to be able to run this for consoles, well, I think we're going to be talking about that next episode with a little bit of Neo and
Scorpio.
All right.
Alrighty.
Thanks for watching, guys.